Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the famous Birdland Jazz Club here in New York City. Recently here at Birdland celebrated the 106th birthday celebration of the life and legacy of composer and pianist Thelonious Sphere Monk. And they brought together this very special quintet featuring the great Greg Osby on alto saxophone, Jon Irabagon on tenor saxophone, Allison on bass, Steve Smith on drums, and Aaron Goldberg on piano. Tonight here on the Pace Report, I'm honored to profile alto saxophonist Greg Osby. Now, the music world knows Oz as one of these musicians who always start outside of the box as a prolific musician. His music ranges from straight hip-hop to post-bop, funk, R&B, and other forms of black and international music forms. Tonight here on the Pace Report, Greg and I sit down and reflect on the life and legacy of Thelonious Monk and what he means to him musically, but we also sit down and dissect some very important parts of his career, including him playing with the great Andrew Cyrille as well as the legendary DeJohnette. Also very important to the music game right now is inner circle music, which Greg started almost over 20 years ago, which is a safe haven for musicians and composers, not only to own the masters of their own music, but also introduce and give voice to musicians that would never be picked up or heard by the major record labels. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of the 106th birthday celebration of Thelonious Sphere Monk, featuring the great Greg Osby on alto sax, Jon Irabagon on tenor saxophone, Steve Smith on drums, Allison on bass, Aaron Goldberg on piano. Live here on the Pace Report from Birdland here in New York City. know you guys are playing a very special set in honor of the great Thelonious Sphere Monk. How did this project come about?
Well, it's more or less a tribute project, a cooperative band that's organized by producer Milan Simic. He does these collectives on occasion, primarily here at Birdland, to do catalogs of esteemed composers and heavy figures, in the music. And this is one that, I've been doing for several years, and the music is exceptionally challenging. These aren't pieces that are played regularly, so you actually have to decode, what's happening and decrypt and analyze and to figure out how to negotiate and navigate them artfully. Otherwise, it's very easy to get tripped up because Thelonious Monk's music is not standard by any stretch.
Do you think that was his genius, making his music very, very outside of the box?
I don't think it was deliberate. I think it's because his music is a direct reflection of his personality, of his schisms, or it's a very distinctive mirror into what I'm told he was actually like. Very unorthodox person. He probably was a living riddle to a lot of people. They couldn't figure him out, and so that that's the most honest thing. When music sounds like the person, sounds like their personality, it sounds like other person's description of that person. So, given the responsibility to try to interpret that music, that's an honor for me. To put myself in that framework and to try to emerge somewhat victorious, and to try to give the listeners a takeaway.
We're looking at Monk, we're looking at Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn. These guys now are like our Beethoven as far as compositions and the music that they've lived, what that continues to live on. How do you think that has manifested into where we are right now? Now they've been gone for a while, but how do you think that that's come to be right now?
Well, a lot of those great compositions embody the cornerstones and the fabric of what's known as contemporary and improvised music. People have a lot of names for it, but the rites of passage, when developing your skills and your ability to interpret this music, you have to deal with some of these pieces. You can't avoid them. Otherwise, it's very apparent in your playing that you leapfrog over some of the more challenging, Duke Ellington pieces, Thelonious Monk pieces, or Wayne Shorter compositions, and it's just a heady achievement, to emerge from some of these vehicles successfully, So, and again, they are demarcations of the period, the flavor of of the times, socially, politically, economically, or whatever. Even just as black people, you can kind of feel the essence of what they were dealing with through the principles embedded in the music. So it's solid, and it's timeless. This music sounds as contemporary as anything written today. It doesn't have an expiration date on it.
When was the first time you really started diving into Monk, and what were some of the albums and some of the compositions you started to really dissect?
I had my first one was a compilation that I had probably in my senior year of high school. See, my mother worked at a record distribution company in St. Louis, so she brought home a lot of promotional copies and a lot of returns. So we had stacks and stacks of vinyl and 8-tracks and cassettes. That a lot of people weren't they didn't have access to. So I was primarily consumed by more popular players, Grover Washington Jr., Ronnie Laws, Junior Walker, funky players. So when I heard this Thelonious Monk record, it was a Blue Note compilation, a 2-album set, and I just couldn't make any sense of it. A lot of it sounded wrong or incorrect. It sounded like he had bad time. It sounded like he wasn't grooving. He wasn't swinging. It sounded like the record was skipping. To be honest, I thought it was defective. But upon repeated listen, see, I'm never openly dismissive of something. Just outright. I'll give it, a second, maybe even a third listen after I've lived a little bit, after I've experienced enough to approach it with different ears, hopefully more mature ears. And when I did, something, it stuck. And it was significant. That might have been around 1978, like my first year in college. I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and I was sitting, with Wallace Roney, trumpeter Wallace Roney, and Gary Thomas, and I had a cassette. And we just sat around and listening, to things, and I put in like a Monk cassette. And Wallace was a bit more advanced than us, so he explained some things, and then it made more sense, conceptually and theoretically. Because at first, some things are an acquired taste, and some things you just have to come back to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Since we're on Wallace, can we talk about Wallace?
Absolutely.
Wallace and I are Geminis. He's a few days before me, and my time with Wallace over the years, I have very, very special affinity to what he brought to Black American music and his legacy. And you were relatively young at Howard when you met him and Jerry.
Well, Wallace and I were the same age.
Okay.
Okay. Jerry was a couple years older than us.
Okay.
She was a senior and we were freshmen. And Gary Thomas. We were all there at the same time.
What was your impression of Wallace the first time you met him? And did you, at that point, when you were trying to figure out being a musician, did you ever think, fast forward a couple of years, that Wallace would become this prominent trumpet player? He and a couple of other trumpet players kind of brought the whole Miles Davis thing to the music.
Sure. I mean, at that age, of course, you never could even conceive of anyone's success rate or abilities in terms of a projection. We were just young people trying to find our way. However, Wallace was light years ahead of us because, he was from Philadelphia. He had access to, some really great players in terms of, what the people that resided there, they were playing at a high level, and its proximity to New York. Also, Wallace had perfect pitch, and I guess either his father was a musician or his father, made him privy to a lot of great historical recordings. So Wallace, he was already playing. He was already firing, on all cylinders by the time we got there. Me, I was making a crossover from R&B and funk and soul music to jazz, still not really understanding how the mechanism worked. And so one time, during a class, an improvisation class, I was playing, and so afterwards, Wallace, he had a practice room right next to me and Gary Thomas's practice room. So he called me over and said, "Yo, Oz, I want to talk to you." And he said, "Yeah, I can hear that, you have good facility, you have a great ear, you have great natural instincts, but there's some things that it's apparent that you don't really know, what's happening." So he took some manuscript paper, he wrote out the changes to Cherokee. He said, "So this goes here, this resolves here, you can use the scales here." And basically in that moment, he taught me more than I had been learning in the classes. I mean, he made it clear. It was like one of those eureka moments, like the light bulb went up. I said, "Oh." So I was kind of, implying these things, but it was basically, accidental or, something, just may resolve because it just felt good or it sounded like it should go there. But as far as I was concerned with him, he knew that I had, the capability. And so he actually, gave me he put me in a catapult that sent me on the right trajectory. And from that moment on, I became a serial transcriber. I transcribed tons of solos every day, and I analyzed them, and then I tried to incorporate that information, into the work, and gradually. To be honest, in a very short while, I went from A to Z. I mean, I grew faster at any time in my development based upon the way he explained it. Because see, in classes, they spoon feed you information, you know, over the course of a semester, and hopefully you'll stay at that school for 4 years, you know, and you still may not get it because they only give you so much. But it was a very concentrated, you know, session, and he broke it down in brothers terms. You know, you do like this, and you know, move it like this, and you know, this is what happening or whatever. And I think that's the way to do it. I mean, you know, you have to kind of determine, you know, where people's strengths are, and then, you know, refine, you know, and work on, you know, the weak points. And he, you know, just like a doctor, and he gave me the prescription, and I said, oh, is that right? And so yeah, he helped me out tremendously. I mean, more than any singular teacher I've ever had, you know. And you know, again, we were the same age, and so yeah, he was very, very, very instrumental in helping me out. And then I took that information and told Gary, and then he took a giant leap forward, because Gary, you can't really tell now, but at that time he was a Dexter Gordon fanatic. You can't really tell. I was a Cannonball Adderley, you know, freak, and it helped us out. So you know, that's you know, what the most significant memory I have of Wallace. You know, just, you know, us in, you know, jam sessions, and then him bringing tunes that were not standard songs. They may have been the B-sides, or you know, filler pieces on albums. You know, obscure Hank Mobley recordings, or I don't know, Junior Cook, or some Joe Henderson recording. You know, that is not one of his top 10, you know, most popular songs. And so, but these pieces, they had installations, you know, embedded in them, that once you figured that out, well, then a whole arena of possibility was open, you know. So he would like bring things with different progressions and harmonic channels, and different intervals, and different tempos, different you know, degrees of challenge, and it was strategic, but you know, he liked to, you know, think outside the box. And also, you know, just listening to him practice, that helped my, you know, honed my ability to practice more effectively, because I would hear what he practiced and how he practiced it. You know, it wasn't just repetitive call and response, or, you know, recalling, you know, something that he had been done over and over again. You know, I heard him going through the keys and going through cycles, and then he would get at the piano, he would play chords and stuff, then he would play something on top of that, and yeah, he was a great model for me.
You said something when you were reflecting on Wallace about transcribing.
Mm-hmm.
Tell my viewers and tell musicians the importance of transcribing, because from my understanding, you didn't have that language in your musical vernacular or how you approach the music.
Mm-hmm.
And from what it sounds like, it's been very, very, very beneficial from you moving forward on how you think as a musician, and also how you pen your music for other musicians.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, music is primarily communication. It's communication based upon a series of principles, within parameters, within, a certain framework that you have to adhere to, certain forms, certain instances and characteristics that, if not addressed and if not imposed, would then is considered invalid by some people, or it's just not, it's not happening. It's not swinging, it's not grooving, it's not harmonically sound. It just doesn't have the right character. So as I was trying to to understand how things worked, I recognized certain similarities in the way some of the great players played, and I recognized certain consistencies in how they embraced certain registers, certain turnarounds, certain catapults into different zones. I said, wait a minute, man, he played the same thing, but it was different. So then I just embarked on this whole transcribing scenario where I would pick a song, a very challenging song, and I would transcribe a solo from different players playing the same song, and I would compare the solos, what they did, where they did it, how they did it, and I would target certain areas and see what they did in that area, and then I was able to build a vocabulary based upon those observations. So say for instance, I pick a random song, All the Things You Are, I would transcribe a Charlie Parker solo, of course, Sonny Stitt, Cannonball Adderley, maybe Jackie McLean, Lee Konitz, and then I would, compare everything that they did, and so it was just a building of dialect, dialogue, and order. And so it got to the point where I didn't have to write it out anymore. I could just listen, and I could make extractions just listening, because the more you do it, the easier things become, and the familiarity takes place, and you kind of you almost can anticipate what's going to happen. And so then it got to the point where I would make extractions, not of the whole solo, but things that really appealed to me. So it might be 2, 4, or 8 bars, and I would I would extract that, and then I would transpose that into 12 keys. So I would make practice regimens out of these extractions, and so I would practice those until they were second nature, and then I would make variations on those extractions, so that they would fit in other places. So I was building language upon something that I took, and then I personalized it to the degree that it wasn't even recognizable anymore. And so I developed that to the point I was able to do that spontaneously. So I could hear something, anticipate it, based upon something that I studied a long time ago, and I would be able to do theme and variations. It was just a compounding of sorts, that type of measure, and that's how I developed a language, and that's how I developed a way to make variances on things that I created, So it was a system that was initiated, by just being a rabid transcriber, and a lot of students that come through me, during my lectures, or master classes, or residencies, or just one-on-one students, they say, well, I don't want to play like anybody. I want to play like myself, and I don't want to study Charlie Parker or Cannonball, but you will never arrive at that, because I don't want to tell them that you're nobody yet, but you can't arrive. You can't speak unless you learn, the tenets and the principles of how language works. I don't care if you're speaking English or you're studying a foreign language. You have to know fundamentals, you have to know basics, and you have to know how to link things together, and you have to know structure. And you can't learn that unless you copy. You have to mimic, the people who did it the best. and people try to leapfrog over that and say, yeah, well, I'm gonna do my own thing. Well, you're always gonna sound like you're skating. You're gonna sound like you're half stepping, because those pillars of recognition, that are tried and true, are gonna be missing in your output.
Stanley Cowell and Charles Tolliver, they did some very important things with Strata East music, as far as allowing, one, an opportunity for young musicians and composers to have their vision out there, and they can own their masters.
Right.
I guess Max Roach did it with Charles Mingus with Debut Records. And a lot of your contemporaries are doing it now. Orrin Evans is doing it with Amani Records. Jason Moran is doing it. Inner Circle Music is something that you started in 2007, and it's been flourishing for almost 2 decades. Tell me why you decided to do this.
Well, I did 4 recordings on an independent German label called JMT. So I think I started that in 1986 or so. And then in 1989, I signed with Blue Note Records. And that went on into 2016 or so. And it would have gone on, you know, as long as Bruce Lundvall was there. He was the president, and I only answered to him. He never intervened. He never made any suggestions. Just do what you want, and, you know, and you know, we'll market your. He was like the best fan, the best general of that outfit, and he never got in the way, and he just, you know, loved what I did and exceptionally supportive. But it was a couple moments, you know, that, you know, were epiphanies, or, you know, just wait a minute, you know. So I was touring with Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead, and I did some touring with the Grateful Dead too at that time. And I looked out into the audience one day, and I saw like a whole like roped off area, and there were these burly guys, you know, with beards, you know, they were standing there, and they had these microphones on stands and things. And I said, Phil, man, these guys, you know, they're recording your concert, man. You better just send out the security. He said, oh no, that's the taper section. I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, you know, they've been taping us, you know, since 1967 or so, you know. And he said, you know, we allow them to tape, and, you know, with the stipulation that they don't sell any of the recordings. They just can freely trade them among other fans and other followers. I say, well, doesn't that, you know, rob you of your revenues? You know, these cats are, you know, trading live recordings. He said, no, on the contrary, it keeps us, you know, in the mix, you know, whether or not we're on tour. You know, because people, well, you know, you give me Columbus, Ohio, well, I'll give you, you know, Little Rock, blah, 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 and they trade, you know, and it's like a badge of honor for a lot of the Deadheads to have a recording from every tour, you know, from every, you know. So, and they want the set list, and they follow it, and they compare, and I noticed that, you know, being on tour with them.
Hold on for a second. So, the Grateful Dead, despite the fact that what's his name is dead, they have an archive of live performances.
Oh yeah.
For the last 60 years.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has all the recordings of all of their live shows. Some people, you know, they go to great lengths, you know, to get, oh man, you have, you know, Charlotte, North Carolina, you know, 1968, blah blah blah, you know, blah blah, you know, oh yeah, were you at the show in 1982, and, you know, and it's a scene, it's a scene, and I thought about that. I said, wow, you know, so what I did was I put some live shows on my website, you know, so people could download them and burn CDs, you know, and make live, you know, CDs, and the response was so great that the server crashed.
Wow.
And I had to get a whole new server, a whole new representation or whatever. I said, wow. And as a result, my sales at Blue Note like went through the roof, because I was, you know, touring with them, and they would sell my CDs on their merch table.
Loyalty.
And all these hippies and stuff, you know, that weren't hip to me, and they were buying boxes of CDs, way more than I was selling. I was like, wait a minute, sales are up, and I said, yeah, I think I'm finished here. It was also due to, you know, there was a changing of the guard at the record company itself. You know, there were a lot of people at the desks who I didn't know, a lot of young people, you know, with flannel shirts and jeans, you know, with holes in them, and, you know, dirty Converses. I said, man, they look like they should be like at like a Nirvana concert, you know, like some heavy metal stage diving in a mosh pit or something. Because when I started there, you would hear, you know, Lee Morgan coming out of, you know, the offices, and Hank Mobley, and, you know, and Jackie McLean, but it was silent. I said, man, it doesn't feel like a music company anymore. It's very, very clinical and corporate. So I got a really big artist grant, and that afforded me, you know, the access to sign some people that I admired, and to hire a publicist, and to to get the company started. So that was 2007. And it's been great. It's been great because I've been able to curate a series of recordings by people who I think deserve a wider audience. They have a whole battery of music of their own. Some of them conceptually are very solid, and I give them access to my connections of promoters and publicity and proprietors of large and smaller performance establishments, and make them privy to contract negotiation, presentation, band organization, rehearsal techniques, composition, whatever. Because a lot of them are younger. Some of them are professional. They've already had many releases, and just being associated with us has helped them. Some people have done one recording and then they got picked up by major label with a great budget, and it's fine because I don't hold anybody's reins like that. It's a catapult, and I'm a conduit. And they can come through here and absorb some information, and hopefully it is beneficial to them. And I encourage them to go on. So and some people have gone on and done other projects, side projects, and main releases, and they've come back to do more creative things. So it's inner circle music. It's not inner circle jazz or inner circle anything else. It's just has to be different. Very well conceived. Very well produced, and honest. Not done for the money or for popularity, but like something that's really critically, developed, from the ground up, that I guess warrants a second take.
Bruce Lundvall was very, very, very important to Blue Note, and I guess when he left, Don Was came in, and when you signed on, I remember seeing guys like Jason Moran, Kurt Elling, Charlie Hunter, Bill Charlap. There was a lot of new visions of music, Black American music, that he brought to the forefront. And what are some of the things that you learned from Mr. Lundvall as a musician and as an executive running your label that you apply it every day now?
I like Bruce's unbiased ear. His, I guess his primary concern was quality and earnestness, as I said, because he knew a lot of the projects that he signed. He liked them, for how they made him feel and what they represented, and he knew that there wouldn't be a tremendous windfall or return on them. But he was he signed a lot of important people, when he was president of CBS.
Yeah. So
he knew, the value of artist development. Maybe this record is like too out there for some people, or maybe too advanced. But we're going to work with you and let you develop so that people they may go back to to the earlier work. And he gave people a shot. He didn't just drop somebody if they didn't recoup the budget. And I respect that. And also, Bruce was, I don't know, he was just a sharp cat. We used to talk about clothes, and
he was impeccable. Every time I saw him.
We talk about cufflinks, we talk about tie bar, we talk about shoes, we talk about hats and stuff. That kind of thing. So that kind of perspective, in terms of craft and framing, the label, he gave it a hip face. It was an honor to be on Blue Note, just to be, in the catalog with some of the people who define what hip really is. It's like, my uncles would tell me, they would buy Lee Morgan's records and they would walk around with the album, not even, unwrapped. It's like still shrink wrapped. They would like look, oh man, look at those boots, look at those, look at that jacket, look at that tie, and they would dress like that,
right?
And or Miles, things like that, just the very definition of whatever, and nothing lasts, nothing lasts, things shift, and now we're in another realm that I don't really know what the markers are. You know, I don't know where the goalposts are. It's almost like anything goes, and it seems to be dominated by. So more or less, we're in the post hip hop era.
There's no filter.
Yeah.
There's no filter on
Yeah.
anything now.
Well, yeah. You know, things have to be defined. You know, by, you know, like very, very staid and solid. You know, characteristics. Like, man, you know, okay. You know, not compartmentalized, but like, okay, this is this, and this is that. But now, okay, say for instance, you know, the word jazz. What is it? You know, when you have a jazz festival and there's no improvising musicians on it, it's like, you know, Chaka Khan and the Roots and Erykah Badu. I love all of them. You know, they're all friends and I'm cool. You know, but it's like, you know, then, you know, great players in New York that are playing for the door somewhere, or playing on the street, you know, begging for money, or playing, you know, doing Zoom, you know, begging for donations or whatever you can contribute. You know, my rent's like 6 months past due, and it's like, you know, a lot of great players have been reduced to minstrelry and begging. When, you know, man, you know, a very prominent friend of mine, he made a funny quote on Instagram recently. He said, "Man, I'm going to have to like stop playing jazz so I can get on some of these jazz festivals." You know, and that's funny, but it's really sad. It's really sad that it's come to this. I mean, you know, a lot of musicians I find, you know, they're sitting idly, you know, in their apartments, you know, with the 5-6 roommates, you know, over the summer when they used to dominate the jazz festivals, and now, you know, it's hard to find work. You know, the ranks are saturated with a lot of young people who unfortunately have undervalued the music by playing for the door, or playing for, you know, a paltry offering from, you know, a shifty promoter who pockets all, you know, all of the, you know, the funding. So it's, you know, those of us who are responsible and aware of where we are and what's happening, you know, we have to embark on, you know, more or less a rescue mission to kind of reclaim, you know, this music from, you know, the depths of hell, you know, where it resides now. Because, you know, I go see musicians play, younger players. You know, Mr. Osby, could you come check me out? And just the conditions that they have to, you know, play within as a club here in town. You know, that I don't even know if it exists anymore because I haven't been there in years. But I would go there and people would be playing pool and ping pong and hollering.
Oh, you're talking about
you know what
the cellar. It's now the cellar dog now.
Yeah, man. You know, it's like right in the middle of a beautiful ballad. You know, tender expressiveness. Yeah, you know, fuck yeah, you know, like drinking like $3, you know, Pat Blue Ribbon out of the can.
I know,
you know, like,
and rats running around. I've been there. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Jerk off, you know, like you know, meatheads and stuff. You know, just interrupting, you know, cats who practice like, you know, 7-8 hours a day. You know, and I'm like, man, is this what's happening? Is this what it is? And so, you know, some of the clubs I don't even go in anymore because I feel out of place. I feel, you know, a disconnect between me and the younger generation. A lot of them, they don't listen to anybody but like 3 or 4 guys.
I'm a big fan of Andrew Hill, and there are a couple of people that in the jazz idiom that just really are kind of off and under the radar. He and a couple other people. You've had the honor of playing with him for 15, 16 years?
Yeah, it was, like that. Yeah, about 15, 16 years, that's true.
He was really a descendant of Monk, and I want to say kind of Jaki Byard also. It's a couple of people that were in his trajectory musically. What was it about him that, one, the jazz community didn't understand or didn't want to understand, and why he's underappreciated?
One of his main cats was Bud. A lot of people don't hear that, and it's interesting when a player's output masks their primary influences, and to me that floats my boat, as they say, because I want to hear. Well, okay, let me put it like this. Dr. Hill, as I like to call him, he was a very, very eccentric, iconoclast. Very individualistic. Very perceptive, deep cat. And we had some marathon conversations. Powwows. Just like one-on-one all-nighters, a lot of all-nighters. And he laid, some gems on me that, that won't, just admittedly won't be found in any book, in any volume, anywhere. Things that you have to get from the source, from people who lived it, people who experienced it, and people who interfaced with other, heavy hitters. And you kind of had to hang with him in order to figure out how to decode, his lingo, his dialect. It was very, very specific, and his playing again was a mirror of his personality. I mean, he had like a kind of a stutter, but it was a rhythmic stutter, and his playing had this like stop start character to it, and broken rhythm he was of Haitian descent. So a lot of that rhythm, when mixed with what people consider jazz and stuff, I mean, it's going to create a lot of spaces in I won't say unnatural, but unusual places. So the way his chords fell, the way his voicings were spaced, the way he felt rhythm, and then the way he wrote. And you would look at some of his charts and say, man, this is very basic, and then you would have to listen to his placement, because what was on the page didn't reflect what that was. Just a blueprint. He didn't mean for you to follow that explicitly, because you would have to listen to him. Okay, that's what he meant by that. So, and I've had that kind of relationship with him, Mr. Shorter, same kind of decrypting necessary, to understand what they were really talking about. So the hang was important. The hang between generations. I had that kind of vibe, with Jaki Byard, Jim Hall, just shutting up and letting them talk. And I'm the sponge, and I'm just going to absorb it, and I'll speak when spoken to. Or if you ask me a question, but I'm not going to interject. Well, I think, and well, this is what's happening now, and that's not, because, man, again, it's like a university's worth of value, in just the spoken word, and that's I mean, this goes back to what I was talking about, why I don't go to these clubs, because I don't really vibe with a lot of these kids. They come to me and say, "Hey, what's up, Greg?" I'm like, man, I'm 63 years old. How you gonna, I would never do that. I would never like walk up to Ron Carter, "Hey, what's up, Ron?" You know what I mean? You don't do that.
Right.
But respect and knowing your place and absorption and allowing yourself to invest in this value system that's abundant, as opposed to, you know, I'm young, I know everything, the internet tells me everything I need to know, I don't need to play like anybody else, I got my own thing, man, you know. Well, then that's why the music sounds like it sounds.
Right.
A lot of it is foundationless, is groundless, it doesn't have the, you know, the body or you know, or the staples of, you know, what makes this music timeless. You know, I don't want to say a lot of it is disposable, but it's really, you know, cats practicing in public. You know, ripping off, you know, all this stuff, you know, that they've played a million times, and then they get in front of an audience. And they're not telling stories. It's basically, you know, just put the spotlight on me right now because it's all about me. It's not about the band. It's all about me. And this music as a collective entity, you know, wasn't based upon those principles. It comes, you know, from big bands and ensembles and collective thinking, and we're going to move forward in mass, not like, you know, me and you all catch up later. And you know, so there's a great deal of backpedaling, you know, that's going to be necessary for this music to reach the people again, for them to, you know, to consider it, you know, valuable. You know, a lot of people, you know, they listen to the music. Well, say for instance, you talk to a random person, a lay person on the street, and you're oh, excuse me, random person, you know, what do you think about jazz? And you know, they'll say, well, I don't know, it all sounds alike to me. And they won't be lying, because it does. You know, when you got like all the young kids listening to whoever's hot on their instrument, you know, all the guitars, you know, they want to listen to Kurt Rosenwinkel. All the tenor players want to listen to Mark Turner or Chris Potter, and all the alto players want to, you know, be like Kenny Garrett. All the pianists want to be Brad Mehldau or whatever. All the bass players want to be Christian McBride or, you know, or Brian Blade or, you know, whoever's hot, whoever they think is hot. You know, and they just forsake, you know, this whole arena, you know, this whole library, man, of information that if they would invest in, you know, and just, you know, investigate, man, you know, just imagine what music would sound like if some young tenor player, you know, he was a combination of, I don't know, Gene Ammons and Dexter Gordon and Hank Mobley and Stan Getz, and then he put that in the pot, stirred that up, and then just emerged sounding like all four of them, but none of them. That would be like a Frankenstein's monster that we need.
I'm noticing there's this music, a lot of this music, from hip hop to pop, R&B, there's no soul in it. Mm-hmm. And I understand where you're coming from, because you got a couple years on me, but I came up of an era when Tommy Bell was genius. Mm-hmm. Tommy Bell crafted that whole Philly international sound. You want to look at the Funk Brothers of Motown. You had, you know, those core players, mm-hmm. Earl Van Dyke, mm-hmm. Ariel Green. I mean, Stax, Booker T. Jones, Steve Cropper, mm-hmm. Isaac Hayes. And I say these names because they were the architects of what gave that music the soul.
Absolutely.
And I'm starting to see what you're saying, because it's like I still don't understand Taylor Swift. I still don't understand Adele. In fact, Adele has been done like 7 to 8 times.
Well, Adele has a sound, you know, identifiable, you know, approach, and you know, but I wouldn't know a Taylor Swift song if you beat me upside the head with it. And not to, you know, to dismiss her artistry or whatever, but what I've heard, I mean, it wasn't memorable enough for me to, you know, to give it a second take. Now, maybe it's because I'm not like a 20-something white girl, you know, but there, you know, there's some pop music, you know, that speaks to me. But so I don't know, a lot of this stuff is it seems like producers' projects as opposed to the artists really being the centerpiece. You know, like especially back in the 90s, I mean, you would hear like a record, you say, oh, I know Babyface produced that, I know Teddy Riley produced it, I know Jam and Lewis produced that, because their mark was all over it. You know, and Quincy Jones, you know, he had a sound,
yeah,
you know,
right,
and
even with the rap producers, not to cut you off.
Oh yeah,
Pete Rock was bipolar different. Premier,
the Bomb Squad.
Yeah.
Oh man, you know.
DJ Muggs, Ninth Wonder.
Eric Sermon.
Yeah.
You know, man, yeah. You know, what's his name on the West Coast? Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
DJ Pooh. What's that cat Sir Jinx. You know,
Yeah.
they had a sound. You know,
Right.
And I had a foot in that arena too. I love hip hop. You know, but now, man, I mean, it just became, you know, you got like cats sound like dope addicts. They sound like they're nodding.
Yeah.
You know, it sound like they're on a heavy nod, man, mumbling and stuff and nonsensical. I mean, it's not even, I guess it's rhythmic, but the content isn't, I mean, it may be clever once, but you know what they're talking about, man, it's like, you know, my gold, you know, my women, my, you know, crystal, you know, my platinum crucifix, you know, my watch, my diamond encrusted watch, you know, the trap house. Like, man, you know, you don't need to preach to me, but give me something to work with here, man, you know. But I feel the same way about a lot of, you know, the instrumental music that's happening too. It's like, man, you know, that was a waste of a record deal.
There you go.
You know,
There
man, you know, you would have been better off giving that money to somebody who's homeless, who's really in need, you know, because you just went into the studio for a week and spent all this money mixing and, you know, got a photographer and this cover and all this kind of stuff, and nobody's going to buy that record. You know, you've produced 1,000 CDs and you got basically 1,000 beer coasters.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because, I mean, you know, you listen to this and like, man, why did they, you know, it's ill-conceived. It sounds premature, you know, and then you got like some 21-year-old like playing ballads and stuff, and like, man, you only had one girlfriend. What do you know about, you know, passion and love and loss and whatever, you know? You cats, you know, get out of school, they graduate from college, and for their graduation present, they, you know, get a recording, you know. Yeah, here's son, let's go. Man, you haven't lived, you haven't. You know, but I don't want to sound old and crusty and cantankerous yet, because I still have faith and I still have, you know, I'm still optimistic, but I have to knuckle down, and it's the responsibility of people in my generation, you know, to be more mindful in terms of, you know, administrating, you know, some, you know, the tactics necessary, you know, for success, as opposed to withdrawing and, you know, being dismissive of all, you know, because that's not going to help either, because all the elders helped me.
Right.
They helped me. They were very, very generous with information and their time, and they indulged me, you know, whenever I called, or whatever. I said, I'll buy you a glass of wine, I'll buy you beer, and, you know, would you just give me a few minutes? And a few minutes turned into, you know, the sun's coming up.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you know, everybody's responsible. Everybody has, you know, a stake in you know, in this, the whole arc. Yeah.
My foray into Greg Osby was with DeJohnette, special edition. And it was you and Lonnie Plaxico. And I gotta ask you about your time with Jack and those recordings now. I mean, we're moving almost 40 years into that first record. Tell me about Jack as a musician, percussionist, and also talk to me about him as a band leader.
Well, I'll answer your first question, your last question first. As a band leader, he was probably the most significant role model for me in terms of how to organize a band and to give them enough space to express themselves without being domineering and being a tyrant or being a Svengali. My rule is the only rule, and he picked the right players to interpret his wares. And I've been told by him and other cherished leaders that if you have to tell your guys in the band too much, when you got the wrong guys. You should call the right guys that will enhance and will breathe life into these notes on the paper. And another thing that I got from Jack was just how he related to people in the business, or how he diffused potentially volatile circumstances and situations that could have just imploded. We would get to an airport and they would say, "I'm sorry, Mr. DeJohnette, but we gave away all your seats." And instead of blowing up, he would say, "Well, we have a sold-out concert ahead of us, and it'll be 2,500 people who would be like very, very disappointed. I know it's not your fault. I know you're only doing your job. Is there anything you can do? Oh, by the way, here's our new CD. No strings attached or whatever." And we just had some cancellation. We knew they were sitting on those seats, but that kind of thing. Whereas the other leaders I was with, man, they just made a scene. We're all about to get arrested. That kind of thing. So that, and Jack would he would appear to the rehearsals with these sketches, and through us like having our treatment of them, then they would blossom into full-blown compositions and stuff. So he got the right cats. Well, he got me. I was in the band with David Murray, John Purcell, and Howard Johnson and Rufus Reed. And then by and by, I said, "Well, man, I got a partner in Baltimore, and he's really playing." So I got Gary Thomas in the band, called Lonnie, and then Jack got Mick Goodrick, who was, after a couple of years was replaced by Mike Cain, who I, pulled into the band. So it kind of became like, my second band, because by that time I was recording under my own name too. But Jack never told us what not to play. He always, in fact, he said, "Man, what was that you did last night? That was happening, man. Keep that in there. Yeah, keep doing that." He was very encouraging, and as opposed to, of course, I was being courted by other leaders. I can pay you more money. It's more prominent. The conditions are better. But I knew that I would be just a brick in the wall. Whereas with Jack, I felt like I was a major contributor. He let me bring my own compositions. He let me record those compositions.
Right.
Whereas I knew that wouldn't have happened. So I was able to blossom and to mature very, very rapidly in his band, just as an observer and as a participant. So it was the best situation. And meanwhile, I was still playing with other people, joined by Keane, Mohawk Richard Abrams, Andrew Hill a little later, and Jim Hall, around that time. And, I did a short stint with Freddie Hubbard, a short stint with Woody Shaw, a short stint with, McCoy, so, but Jack, that really fundamentally, set the pace for me as a leader. And I just like the multi-directionality of his music. That's what he calls it, multi-directional. So we have a song, and it's set in form, but every night he challenged us to take it to another place. So that he could play another rhythm behind it. So harmonically we can go. So tonight we're going to play it passionately. Tomorrow we're going to play it furiously. The next day we're going to play it, with a different level of different degree of intensity, a different color or whatever. And so it wasn't fixed, and that really that meant a lot to me, because there's something about my personality and about the way I look at things. I cannot repeat things verbatim like that. I can't even play the same line the same way. I would do pop solos for producers here in New York, and yeah, just like that, do it again. I say, man, I can't do that again. I just it's prohibitive in my makeup to do something like that. I mean, I'm not a classical musician, and you should have called a studio guy. That's what they do. That's what they get paid to do. But I have to do a variation on that. Otherwise, I think I failed as a creative person. And so, being in Jack's, environment, that even, that augmented that, beyond, my expectations. So that was a great experience. That kind of fashioned, how I, wanted to be as a leader, and how I wanted to direct, my career.
That'll do it again for this very special edition of the Pace Report, recording live here at the famous Birdland Jazz Club here in the heart of New York City. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Greg Osby for his time, his reflections on the great Thelonious Sphere Monk. Make sure you support his current album, Minimalism, which is now available on Inner Circle Music. You can buy the music online by way of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook and social media web pages, as well as InnerCircleMusic.com. Also, people, please support Birdland and Birdland Theater here in New York City. For more information on upcoming dates, please visit them online at birdlandjazz.com. I also like to personally thank the staff and management here at Birdland for their warm hospitality, as well as the musicians in this special quintet celebrating the legacy of Thelonious Sphere Monk, the great Allison, Steve Smith, Jon Irabagon, and Aaron Goldberg. As always, people, I can't stress this more than enough. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube, as well as Facebook. Leave comments, as well as follow me on social media by way of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.